You're listening to New York's only home for Reefer Madness. Every week, we'll explore the unique perspective of cannabis in the global hub of commerce and culture. Hear the insights, stories, challenges, and successes of those blazing a path from Brooklyn to Buffalo and everywhere in between. I'm your host, Kalen Castetter, coming to you from the Green Valley of Opportunity, Binghamton, New York. This is the Empire State of Cannabis. Welcome to another week of Empire State of Cannabis. We've got a great guest for you today. Some people call him the Hammer. Some people call him Jason Minard, but he is the general counsel, in-house counsel for Hempire State Growers, CEO of Minard's Family Farm, managing member of Minard Law. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Pleasure. Thank you, Kalen, for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting perspective here, right? Because you're a farmer and you're a lawyer, right? So I think almost every farmer could use a lawyer, and you are a lawyer, so that's excellent. But you also are the general counsel for Hempire State Growers. Why don't you tell us a little about Hempire State Growers, because it is an impressive operation.
Thank you. Hempire State Growers is a cooperative in the Hudson Valley. We grew and successfully harvested 200 acres of CBD hemp, cured, and we are staging it for processing. And we are processing to full spectrum distillate currently. We can do isolate, crude, and we do some flower out of state and to processors.
Awesome, dude. How many acres did you guys grow last year?
We grew 200.
200, and that's across all the farms?
That's across all the farms, predominantly on about 5 farms.
Gotcha. And you were one of those 5 larger farms?
Yes, we did 12 acres at Minard Family.
So is your family farm. So what do you guys normally grow? Apples, right? That's your primary crop?
Apples. Born and raised on a 500-acre apple farm. In it my whole life. Apples.
No shit. That's awesome. And so you guys have a lot of people come by. What's the main driving source of revenue? I mean, you sell the apples. Do you make cider? Yeah, I know you've got the corn maze. So what's up?
Yeah, sell a lot of apples wholesale. We have an agritourism operation. I started in 2015, drive some traffic. A family friend and cousin has a cider mill under the Minard's Beverage Company brand that's in a lot of the big box retail stores. So yeah, it was good. We did hemp tours last year. It was exciting. People love this plant, get real excited, real ramped up. So it was excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, man. So where exactly are you located? You're you pretty much can see your farm off the thruway, right? Is that correct?
Very close to New Paltz, exit 18 off the New York State Thruway. About an hour and 15 minutes north of New York City.
Awesome. Yeah. So I bet a lot of the listeners and viewers have probably drove past it, at least if not, stopped in to visit. So that's really cool, man. So, to get into kind of, some of the major issues that face farmers, right? Why do you think is so important to have good counsel representing you if you're getting into the cannabis industry here, farmer or whatever kind of business?
The hemp industry right now is a bit immature and heavily regulated at this point, from growing, processing to retail sales. You don't want to go it alone. You can get jammed up very, very easily, especially in the hemp game.
Yeah. So some people say that contract's worth the paper that it's written on, right? Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree with that for the most part. I think the contract is a starting point for honesty, integrity, and follow through, and is a bit of leverage, especially in this industry. However, litigation is very, very costly, and it's very helpful to have the mindset to avoid litigation.
Yeah,
so basically, go ahead.
Finding good actors, right? I mean, that's what you're saying. You got to find good people to work with.
100%. Look for integrity, good values, and people that follow through.
So tell me a little bit about your partners, the Hepworths. They have that integrity, right? And I mean, they're known, and how is it like working with them?
100% great individuals, twin sisters, Amy and Gail Hepworth from Hepworth Farms, 7th generations. They had the vision to start Hempire State Growers. Very, very hard workers, hard driving organization. very big picture oriented, doing things to scale efficiently, and very big on the workforce. Equity among the workforce for all the workers, all through the chain.
That's admirable, and that's great. So, what had you been working with them before you decided to endeavor into hemp, or walk me through that?
We got very close very fast. I knew who they are, knew who they were, and Amy and I, started talking, and it was an interesting story. It was a week before planting. I had attended some conferences, some meetings, got to know a little bit about the hemp space, and I texted her and said, I'd like to get involved. Can I get an acre of plants? Next thing you know, she came on the farm, went to 5 acres, went to 12 acres, spread it over 2 farms, and it's been one hell of a ride. I wouldn't do it with anyone else. It's been very enjoyable. You get in, you get out what you put in. Let me say
Yeah.
that.
Definitely. I mean, you know what I say too, if nothing else, I mean, sometimes you don't make money in this industry, but you can make some very valuable lifelong friendships and some great experiences, right? And so, at the end of the day, I mean, the goal for everyone is to be successful. The goal is to make money, right? But you only live once, right? You only have this one chance to have these experiences, and it's important that you have good experiences. There's a lot of people in the hemp industry, in the New York hemp industry, that you can start to work with, and they're just not going to make it enjoyable, right? You're going to end up spending a lot of money on attorneys, going to litigation, yelling back and forth, going back, So how would you advise someone to avoid, I mean, you in a lot of ways are fortunate to have a good group to work with, and there's power in numbers, right? With the collective you got there. But what would you give as advice, for someone who's had a rough time of it, right? Maybe they've dealt with some of these big companies that have screwed them over, or small people have screwed them over and lied to them.
The advice I would give is do your homework. Always do your homework.
Hmm.
Start small. Believe it or not, if Coca-Cola wanted to put CBD in drinks globally, they would only need 200 acres of hemp. So that's a pretty sobering thought right there.
Yeah, it is. No, that is a very sobering thought because, you hear this, well, if we go to food, we go to beverages, all this hemp gets freed up and everything. But I mean, geez, how many acres of hemp do you think were really grown nationally last year beyond the reported numbers? What do you think?
Well, New York had 560 licensed growers with 14,000 acres planted. And nationally, I would defer to you on that. I
Yeah.
do look up to you, Kaylin. As you know, when I started out, I reached out to you and you were very, very helpful, insightful, because you had a similar model. And I thank you for that.
I appreciate that, Jason. Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And I think that, I mean, beyond the fact that there's probably way too much grown in New York, I mean, nationally, there's definitely a lot grown. And I, start small and make goals, right? That's why I tell people it's like, if the only thing you get out of it is the understanding of how to grow cannabis or how not to grow cannabis, that's some pretty valuable lessons, especially if you're looking to get into adult use. So, is that part of the overall goal is to also bring this idea of a collective and a co-op and power in numbers to adult use so that, you can drive small craft growers? We talked about this last week with Michael Casper, where we said, can small guys compete, right? Do you think small guys compete, in your opinion?
In my honest opinion, I think if you do it well, there's opportunity to compete, but you have to develop the markets. You have to have the end sale in mind when you put it in the ground. You have to have the big picture, and you have to be able to be fluid and pivot. When we started, we were going to grow just for biomass, and it's no secret biomass prices tanked. They're at about a tenth of what they were last year at this time.
Yeah.
So we pivoted into the realization that we were going to have to get into processing, which was always a goal. And we have a great team with some great science minds. So we pivoted. We got an extractor on site. We have the ability to go to THC free. And like I said earlier, full spectrum distillate. But to keep the money flowing, we had to pivot also into flower sales, which is a very, very gray area.
Mm.
In February of this year, after legalizing hemp in New York, the Department of Ag put out a memo that the sale of dried hemp flower in state was illegal. So we had to get creative, and the only flower sales that can take place are to out of state players or to anyone with a processing license. So
And what do you think about that? I mean, you're an attorney, you studied the RPA. Was this guidance, is that within the, even legal purview that the department has? I mean, and how does this create a unequal system of you're a research partner and you're not? So we're not going to regulate you, but we're going to regulate the research partner. How much of a problem is that creating?
it's certainly a hurdle to overcome. We hold ourselves to high standards. We take every provision of the research partnership agreement for growing and processing very, very seriously. I lost many nights' sleep over it,
Yeah.
and we try to honor it as best as we can, but at the same time, be a fluid business organization and stay true to our goals and our roots. And when you look nationally, there's only about 4, maybe 5 states that have banned flower sales. So, in my humble opinion, New York is at a disadvantage, and it's not ideal for
Well,
your average farmer.
isn't this crazy though? New York doesn't ban flower sales. They ban the research partner from selling flower, right?
Correct.
So if
100%.
you're a retailer, you're fine with selling flower. If you're a non-research partner, if you're just a distributor, right, or a broker, you're fine with selling flower, and you have no regulations. So that's really tough. And I think a lot of it is the research partner agreement was not meant for the industry that in the marketplace that's set up now, right? We've grown out of it. But I think it's important that the state evolves, right? And I mean, I guess the ag and markets, they would say their hands are tied on flour, right? Because it's not a GMP product. How can they, make sure it's safe, et cetera? But do you think now, beyond a legal perspective, do you think there's any logical reason, scientific reason, public safety reason to not allow the sale of flour to the consumer?
I think it 100% should be legal, Kalen. I stand by it. It comes from a plant. It's natural. You can buy cigarettes if you're 18 years old, 21 years old, anywhere you want, and they are killing people every day. So something that's very healthy for your biological systems, the endocannabinoid system. I see no logical reason to ban this. The only reason folks point to is that police force can't decipher between actual marijuana and hemp. But with legalization on the horizon, for me, it was premature for New York to ban the sale of flower in February.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you now, under the hemp extract law, it's almost intentionally vague on the sale of flower. So, within that framework, do you think there's an ability for flower to be sold under the regs, or because there's been this debate? Well, the law doesn't allow flower, but it doesn't not allow flower too, right? And NYCGPA was very careful to keep that, make sure that that vagueness existed so that the regulations could get it right. But I mean, you've studied the bill. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's an ability to set up a good market for flower in New York?
That's a great point, Kalen. And, I think it stresses the point that it's not codified. New York came out with the law, Governor Cuomo signed it this past December, and the law does not ban the sale of flower. That law does not speak to it. However, it was this memo from the Department of Ag, and yes, I'm sure there are public policy reasons, but at the end of the day, I wrestle with this. I certainly wrestle with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Me too. I think, and a lot of producers too, because like you said, the flower market actually is booming.
The flower market, in all honesty, is where the margins are right now. If you're a small craft grower or a small family farm trying to make a profitable go of hemp farming right now in the year 2020, I just don't see how you're going to make a go of it without having flower in your diversified operation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's talk more about the hemp extract law. It's tough. The regulations are tough. They're pretty stringent. As a processing operation, getting GMP is not easy. It's not cheap, right? Is it too much?
They're designed to create a safer, more consistent product for the end user, for the consumer, which I applaud. Yes, GMP is very costly to achieve, very costly to implement. There's only probably a dozen companies throughout the nation that have achieved GMP for processing in hemp. Proud to say we are one of them, as you are. Congratulations for your manufacturing operation, Empire. Looking forward to working together in the future on that. Um, so I think it's a good thing overall for New York. It sets a national standard. It's one of the most comprehensive laws throughout the nation when it comes to hemp. However, to a certain extent, until the FDA regulates, I do think that it does put New York operators processing at a slight disadvantage at this time.
Yeah.
We just can't compete with folks out west selling full spectrum distillate for $600 a liter. Our
Yeah.
cost of goods sold far exceeds that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you consider if you bought the product or you grew the hemp or you bought the hemp at a reasonable price and you were fair to the farmers, your cost of goods is far exceeds that sale price. $600, man. I'll tell you, when I got in the industry, they were selling kilos of isolate for $15,000.
Scary and another sobering thought.
Yeah,
But again, we got to
man.
pivot. I mean, that this is farming, folks. This is farming.
Yeah.
This is how it's always been. It's how it's always going to be. And to a certain extent, I like the challenge. I think it's good. I think it's healthy. I think the competition's healthy. I think it makes better products, safer products.
Yeah. A friend of mine always says pressure makes diamonds, right? And so what you're creating is tough New York business owners and farmers here because adult use, that's not going to be easy either. When you think these regulations are tough or stringent, adult use are going to be pretty crazy. And so you make it a good point, right? The standards need to go national. We need the FDA involved, right? So I got the HR 5587. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this, but it's a pretty simple bill, right? And so it's
Yes,
sitting in a committee right now, and they're playing politics, right? So you got Colin Peterson. He introduces he's a Democrat in a tough race in Minnesota. Republicans don't want to give him a win. And then McConnell's out in the Senate, and, he might support it, but maybe the Democrats don't want to give him a win. No one wants to give Trump a win. Who is it hurting here, Jason? It seems like it's hurting me and you.
certainly. It's hurting the farmers, the processors, right on down the line, and it's also hurting the consumers because there's going to be weeding and process here. Um, some very good growers and processors with integrity are going to fall. It's going to be like natural selection, unfortunately. The pandemic is certainly not helping matters.
Yeah.
Supply chain, even sourcing supplies to launch our retail line has proved a bit challenging. But again, challenge is good. Pressure makes diamonds.
Yeah, absolutely. So the hemp extract law, as you know, last year, this isn't the version that was passed by Assemblywoman Lupardo, right? And the biggest thing that we heard from national groups was that it the protectionist, quote unquote protectionist language violates the Commerce Clause. I know you're not a constitutional attorney, but give me your thoughts on that.
I don't like it at all. In my humble opinion, some folks with some deep pockets wanted to come play in New York, and unfortunately, they won. Their arguments carried the day. And bottom line is the original hemp extract law provided that only hemp grown in New York could be utilized in processing CBD tinctures, etc., that would be sold in New York. It was fought quite hard by some other interest groups elsewhere throughout the nation, and they won. You can't win them all.
No, I guess you can't, right? You just keep fighting. I mean, that's the big thing. I mean, this is New York. And here's the thing. We talk about New York tough. We talk about this and that. It's because New Yorkers, we know how to get it done. We know how to get it done, whether it's a farm upstate or whether it's, on Wall Street, right? In Manhattan, there's no other place in the world like New York. We talk about this every single episode. There's something unique about New York in every way, shape, or form. So Now let's look at the federal side, because New York was playing catch up, and the 2018 Farm Bill passed, and what you saw every single article: hemp is legal, hemp is legal. We have this promise, this is going to be great, etc. Do you think the promise that Mitch McConnell and certain trade groups and everyone pushed forward, that this is all going to be great? What do you think happened? Because it's tough. It's young, you're right, but some things didn't really come through the way we wanted it to.
My opinion, the train's left the station and it's time for folks to regulate.
Mm,
CBD is absolutely everywhere, from your corner gas station. In all honesty, there could be piss in those bottles. The
yeah,
FDA did a study recently, and over 50% of the tinctures out there that they studied did not have accurate CBD levels, THC levels. Downright scary. And that's what the New York hemp extract law is striving to alleviate. Labeling, third-party testing. In launching our retail product line, I can tell you firsthand that the labeling requirements in New York and the research partnership agreement are far more excessive than even the FDA labeling guidelines.
yeah,
So
yeah.
here we
I mean,
are.
it's taking a gold standard. You got Florida that did very similar regulations, right? So you've got two out of the top four most populous states in the country putting these regulations in. You talk about California. Who knows? California, they're still trying to figure out their adult use cannabis market. They don't want hemp, etc. Texas, I mean, geez, we don't even want to get into Texas, right? So at least you got New York and Florida leading the way. And really, only these two states can do it. Vermont can't come out and say we're going to have the strictest standards, because these companies are going to say we're just not going to sell there. You can't say you're not going to sell in New York, and I think that's why we got a lot of pushback in the original hemp extract bill, because it's such a coveted marketplace, right? So
But you still got it done. That's the key. New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association, you guys did a hell of a job, and hopefully in the future I can help you guys push this over the finish line.
Absolutely. And thanks. And, we talk about someone down Pardo a lot, but Senator Jen Metzger in the Senate, who covers your district down there, right? She was instrumental, and she was talking to, Hempire State Growers and growers down there, and realized this needs to get done, right? And so fortunately, every other cannabis bill didn't get done last year. We didn't see medical expansion. We didn't see adult use, but we did see hemp extract bill. I think it passed the assembly at like 6 a.m. We talked about this with Donna. Like 6 a.m. It was one of the last bills to get called to the floor, and it passed. I mean, that's pretty great. So New York has gotten it right a few times. Where do you think New York's really got it wrong? And it's not just, like in the guidance and stuff, but where do you think in developing the law from the beginning, writing these research partner agreements, because it's very hard to change things once you do it. Where do you think they could have had, and hindsight's 2020, but where do you think they could have had a little more foresight in developing some of these laws and regulations?
I think the research partnership agreements, to a certain extent, are a little overburdensome. They tie your hands to a certain extent. I mean, if you're going to comply with every aspect of it, you better have an attorney on staff. You better study that agreement, and you better follow through in everything that it says. I mean, where it falls short, I'm not one to point out weaknesses. The one thing I will say is on the processing end. Again, until the FDA regulates and the FDA mandates that all CBD come from a GMP facility, it's going to be hard to compete. I'm not going to candy coat this for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And they need to get their act together. Politics aside, they need to get it done. You can have a lot of thoughts on why the FDA is slow walking it. At the end of the day, money talks, right? I think that's what it comes down to. And it's unfortunate. So what is HSG doing looking at other markets? I know you mentioned the export markets. What do you see in there? And I mean, I know we see that with the novel foods, et cetera, they want to see federal regulation. So is there an ability for you to access foreign markets right now?
Well, the first thing we need this Peterson bill to move through. We need CBD to be regulated as a dietary supplement. Because the EU recognizes the GMP facilities in the US. So we are seriously looking into the novel food designation. Very, very costly process. On average, it costs about $500,000 to see it through, and takes about a year or two. Interesting thing there is in the UK, only CBD that has been approved for the novel food designation will be on the shelves a year from now.
Yeah.
So again, it's going to weed out the weaker players, and the more serious folks are going to come to the table. With that being said, fingers crossed, hopefully Hempire State Growers is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can someone support Hempire State Growers? How can we buy your products, website, et cetera? Why don't you give us a little information?
So we've got HempireStateGrowers.com is the website. General overview on the farm, our farm values, our founders, our core team, our processing, extraction facility. So you can check out the website there, learn a little bit more about us. The retail line will be launched here in about another 5-6 weeks. So you can support us in that way. We're going to be opening a retail shop at our main farm, Hepworth Farms, on 9W in Milton, in New York. So it'll be an educational hub. Folks can learn about CBD, what it does for the body. You're not allowed to make medical claims, as we all know, but education is always the key. And it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal what CBD, what this plant can do for the human body. And it's a pretty scary thought that med schools were not even teaching the endocannabinoid system.
It's unbelievable. And you're right. Education is key. Education is key. Jason, I got one more question for you.
Yes, sir.
Why the hammer?
The hammer. Hammer is symbolic to me. The hammer keeps going, always gets it done, despite all odds, challenges, whatever the hammer faces, it comes down on.
Oh, yeah. I love it. So there you go. You got the hammer, Jason Minard. He's the real deal. This is the guy. Check him out. LinkedIn, Facebook, Hempire State Growers. You got tenacity, toughness, intelligence, all in one, man. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Kalen. Look forward to a bright future. Be well, sir.
Thank you, man. And so the episode's going to keep getting better every single week. So tune in, subscribe, let me know your questions, thoughts. You see someone that wants to be on the show, that should be on the show, let me know. Connect with us. So see you next week on Empire State of Cannabis.